The growling started just after the final bell rang across the campus of the Interstellar Cultural Exchange Academy. Bram Carter had just stepped out of the xenobiology wing, stretching his arms after a long morning lecture. The dual suns cast thin shadows across the training fields, and somewhere behind the administration dome, the Academy's maintenance bots buzzed lazily through the sky. Then came the high-pitched shriek of panic, followed by the unmistakable sound of something large barreling across gravel. Bram turned in time to see 4 alien students sprinting across the courtyard, limbs flailing, eyes wide. One of them, a spindly, lime-colored Varnexian named Sutro, shouted over his shoulder, "It's coming! It's coming!" Behind them, bounding with joyful abandon, was a massive brindle-coated dog, specifically a King Corso named Tank. His jowls flapped as he ran, tongue lolling, tail wagging like a metronome gone rogue. His growl was deep, rumbling, and if you didn't know better, absolutely terrifying. Bram dropped his data pad and broke into a jog, trying to close the distance. "Tank," he called out. "Easy, boy. That's not a toy. Those are students." Tank galloped faster, clearly interpreting the chase as a game. Sutro dove behind a decorative hydra shrub, while another alien, a pink-skinned Severan with 4 knees, tried to climb a light pole and got stuck halfway. Bram whistled sharply. Tank skidded to a halt, ears perking, then turned back and trotted toward Bram with a triumphant bounce in his step. The chaos settled into a stunned silence. Sutro peeked from behind the bush, antennae twitching nervously. "He growled," said Sutro. "He growled like a predator." "Our defensive glands activated." Bram chuckled, winded, and scratched Tank behind the ears. "He's just playing," Bram said. "He means no harm." Tank flopped onto the ground, letting out a loud, satisfied sigh. Sutro stepped forward cautiously, eyeing the beast as though it might explode. That sound he made. It triggered my ancestral fear response." "Yeah, that's kind of his thing," Bram said. "Tank sounds like a monster, but he's basically a furry toddler with too much muscle." "Then why is it allowed to roam free?" "He's my service dog. Technically, he's in training. Helps with stress management. Bureau of Interspecies Education signed off on him last semester." Sutro stared at Bram, then at Tank, then back again. "Your species considers that therapeutic." Bram shrugged. "You've seen human politics. This is the least dangerous thing we do." A weary silence fell. Then the Severan, still halfway up the light pole, groaned. "I believe I may have dislocated something." Bram sighed and walked over. "All right, let's get you down." 40 minutes later, the group was seated in the infirmary, limbs wrapped, egos bruised. Bram sat beside Tank, who had fallen asleep with his head on Bram's foot. Across the room, the Academy's head of cultural affairs, a barrel-chested Ovlari named Hearn, entered with a stern look. "Explain," Hearn said. "There was a misunderstanding," Bram replied. "Tank thought the students were playing. The students thought they were being hunted." "He growled," Carter. "He growls when he's happy. He chased 4 students across a public space." Bram nodded. "Which is why I'll be keeping him leashed outside from now on." Hearn's 3 eyes narrowed. "This academy is built on trust. We are not here to test each other's reflexes." "Understood. It won't happen again." Hearn turned to leave, then paused. "I reviewed your planet's candid behavior files. It is deeply inconsistent. Some documentation describes them as cuddly family companions. Others depict them as agents of law enforcement. And then there was a video compilation labeled Dogs Being Derps. I am unclear on your species' position." "Yeah, that sounds about right," Bram said. Hearn left without another word. The next day, Bram received a formal warning, a behavioral review packet, and a surprise invitation to speak at the next Xenocultural Sensitivity Seminar. He accepted. The seminar was held in the planetary auditorium, with over 200 students in attendance. Tank had to wait backstage. Bram stepped onto the platform and tapped the audio note on his collar. "All right," he began. "So dogs." He gestured to the screen behind him, which displayed an image of Tank mid-yawn, looking like he was ready to swallow a moon. "You saw him yesterday. Big, loud, scary." But none of that behavior was aggression. It was joy. He was expressing excitement the way dogs do, which conveniently overlaps with how a lot of apex predators signal they're about to kill something. A few nervous chuckles. "I get it. You're not wrong to be scared. Honestly, if a creature twice my size started barreling toward me while growling, I'd probably scream, too." But here's the thing, dogs are weird. We bred them to be weird. We took wolves and, over thousands of years, turned them into emotional support units. Some herd sheep. Others sniff for contraband. Tank. He helps me stay grounded after deployments. A tentacled student raised a limb. Deployments. Military service. 2 tours off-world. Saw some things I'd rather not unpack in front of a microphone. Tank helps me sleep without waking up screaming. The room quieted. Another student raised his hand. But why not choose something less alarming? Because Tank chooses me, Bram said. When he lays on my chest during a panic attack, I can breathe again. When I'm overwhelmed, he leans against my leg. He's not just a dog. He's a biological anchor. A beat passed. Still, Bram added, I'll make sure he doesn't chase anyone again. That part's on me. There was a tentative applause. Not enthusiastic, but not hostile. Afterward, Bram stayed to answer questions. Some students asked about canine domestication. Others wanted to know if all dogs growled when happy. One asked if Tank had ever eaten someone, which Bram answered with a very firm absolutely not. Sutro approached last. I've been researching your species' relationship with animals, he said. It's inconsistent. That's one word for it. Do you believe this inconsistency is a flaw? Bram thought for a moment. No, he said. I think it's part of our strength. We form bonds with things that can hurt us. We give trust before it's earned. Sometimes we pay for it. But most times, we get something beautiful. Sutro nodded slowly, then extended a limb. I would like to try petting him. Tank's waiting backstage. Together, they walked to the staging room. Tank was lying near a crate of water bottles, tail thumping as Bram entered. Hey buddy, Bram said, kneeling. You've got a new friend. Sutro approached cautiously. Bram guided his hand. Start at the shoulders. He likes that. Sutro touched the short fur and froze as Tank gave a low rumble. It's the sound again. He's happy. Sutro kept petting. After a moment, he said, it feels like homeostasis. Yeah, Bram said. That's the idea. Over the next week, Bram made good on his promise. Tank was kept on a leash in public spaces. Students were given optional dog socialization training, and a surprising number signed up. Bram led the first session, walking Tank through a series of commands while explaining the meaning behind each behavior. By the third session, even the jumpiest students had warmed up. One brave individual, a small, gelatinous being named Fro, volunteered to walk Tank. Tank obeyed every command, tail wagging the whole time. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where someone startled, where Tank barked too loud, or a nervous student backed away. But progress was steady, and soon enough, Tank was part of campus life. Then, 3 weeks later, disaster struck. It happened during a field exercise in the low-gravity dome. A ceiling panel malfunctioned and came crashing down near a group of students. One of them, a young exchange scholar named Dino, got pinned under the debris. Bram was nearby. He heard the crack, the scream, and was running before he processed it. Clear the area, he yelled. Tank was at his side, barking furiously. The panel was too heavy to lift with bare hands. Bram dropped to his knees, checked Dino's vitals, then called for emergency support through his calm breathing. Shallow. Pulse uneven. Possible spinal injury, he said. We need a gurney and stabilization collar, now. Tank lay beside Dino, head pressed gently against the alien's side. His presence calmed the youth's rapid breathing. When help arrived, Dino was still conscious. Paramedics worked quickly, lifting the panel using a hoverjack. As Dino was wheeled away, he looked at Bram and whispered, the beast. Stayed with me. Bram nodded. He's not a beast. He's family. Later that evening, Hearn visited Bram's quarters. I reviewed the incident, he said. Your animal remained calm and provided comfort during a crisis. Yeah, it's what he does. I am recommending that he be officially classified as a therapeutic companion with full access privileges. Bram blinked. Really? There is still fear. But there is also understanding. And that is the purpose of this academy. The following morning, Tank received his own ID badge. And from that day on, not a single student ran from his growl again. It was late afternoon when Bram noticed something was wrong. Tank hadn't moved from his spot under the window in nearly an hour, not his usual post-nap sprawl, but a tight curl, chin tucked, eyes flickering beneath half-closed lids. Bram crouched beside him, fingers brushing the dog's flank. Hey, you all right? Tank gave a faint wag, barely a twitch. Bram pressed 2 fingers to the dog's ribcage. The rhythm was off, too shallow, too fast. His hand moved to the belly. Warm. Too warm. He stood up fast, grabbed his communicator, and tapped into the Academy's medical channel. I need a veterinary unit in Sector Blue, Room C-17. Urgent. A pause. Then a synthetic voice responded. Biological identification? Canine. Male. Large breed. Symptoms: lethargy, tachypnea, elevated core temperature. Suspected febrile onset. Dispatching. Estimated arrival, 6 minutes. Bram knelt again, both hands now steadying the dog. You're gonna be fine, buddy. Just a bug or something. Maybe that synth meat yesterday didn't sit right. Tank didn't react. His ears stayed limp. By the time the med team arrived, 2 quad-limbed Polari and a hover stretcher, they'd already preloaded an atmospheric stabilizer for earthborn mammals. One of them, a tall, silver-furred tech named Varel, scanned Tank with a palm-sized disc. No trauma detected. Internal temperature reads 40.6 Celsius. Bram's jaw tightened. That's over 105 Fahrenheit. He's cooking. We'll initiate surface cooling and fluid rebalancing en route. You may accompany. I'm not leaving him. The stretcher's sides inflated as they lifted Tank up. Bram walked beside it, his pace tight and even, heart hammering harder than it had on any battlefield. They reached the campus annex, a smaller facility built after an incident involving thermoreactive pollen and a vomiting contest gone wrong. The annex specialized in cross-species biology and, more importantly, had been retrofitted for Earth fauna after Tank's arrival. The lead medic, Varel, worked swiftly, slipping N4 into a vein near Tank's shoulder while the other tech adjusted the cooling panel beneath the stretcher. Bram hovered nearby, watching every move. Could it be an infection? He asked. Possibly, Varel said. But we require full panel diagnostics. Then run them. They worked in silence, the room humming with medical drones and slow, rhythmic beeping. 30 minutes passed. Tank's breathing eased, but only slightly. The cooling pad had dropped his temperature by a degree, now hovering around 103. Still dangerous. Varel approached Bram, his expression unreadable. There is a probability this is a systemic immune response. We found elevated leukocyte analogs in his plasma. We're initiating broad-spectrum antimicrobials. Meaning he's fighting something, but we don't yet know what. Could be viral, possibly parasitic, possibly something novel. He hasn't left station grounds in weeks. It'd have to be something local. There are over 3,000 sentient organisms on this campus. Cross-contaminants are always a risk. Bram exhaled slowly. And the prognosis? If we stabilize him within the next 12 hours, survival odds increase significantly. If the fever continues to rise, organ failure becomes likely. The words landed like lead. Varel hesitated, then added, You may remain. We will update you with each development. Bram sat beside the med bed, one hand resting on Tank's paw. He didn't move for hours. By nightfall, word had spread. First Sutro arrived, carrying a small container of nutrient gel, though it wasn't clear whether it was for Bram or the dog. He stood awkwardly by the doorway until Bram nodded. You can come in. Sutro stepped closer, eyeing the machines surrounding Tank. I reviewed the Earth pathogen registry, he said. There are over 17,000 cataloged canine illnesses. Your species' microbial diversity is excessive. Tell me something I don't know. Sutro looked at the dog. He seemed indestructible. He is. Which is why this doesn't make sense. Tank gave a low whine and shifted slightly. Bram leaned in. I'm here, buddy. Sutro tilted his head. I've never seen a human so still. Bram didn't look away from the dog. I've been still before. Usually next to someone dying. There was no reply. A few hours later, another figure entered Mex, a Freelian neurochemist who'd once scoffed at the concept of emotional support animals during a symposium. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the dog, then quietly placed a small data chip on the counter. I compiled a list of environmental toxins that could produce similar symptoms, he said. It's not comprehensive, but it's a start. Bram blinked. Thanks. I still think the term service dog is anthropocentric, Mex added. But I no longer believe it's inaccurate. As the door closed behind him, Bram allowed himself a tight, reluctant smile. By dawn, Tank's fever broke. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough that his breathing grew more regular and the 4 pump slowed its rhythm. Varel confirmed it with a nod. He's responding. Bram leaned back in the chair, every muscle aching. Do we know what it was? Preliminary scans identified a microbe from the campus hydro system. Non-harmful to most species, but it appears to have triggered an autoimmune cascade in his physiology. So we poisoned him with filtered water. Unintentionally. We will update purification protocols. Tank gave a soft bark, barely audible, but unmistakable. Bram stood, both hands cupping the dog's face. You scared the hell out of me. Tank licked his wrist once, then drifted back to sleep. 2 days later, they were cleared to return to their quarters. Tank walked slowly, but unaided, which was more than Bram had expected. They passed through the northern archway, where a group of students had gathered apparently waiting. Bram paused. Sutro stepped forward, holding something in both hands. A collar handwoven, delicate, lined with shimmering threads that shifted colors depending on the angle. It's a gift, Sutro said. A symbol of protection in Varnexian tradition. Bram took it, eyes wide. You made this. With assistance. And a great deal of trial. Thanks, he said. I'll make sure he wears it. Tank wiped once, slowly. Later that week, Bram received an unexpected message from the campus administrator. The council had approved a new elective, interspecies emotional symbiosis. Bram was listed as a co-instructor. The course would cover biological companionship models across civilizations. Tank would be part of the curriculum. During the first class, Bram stood at the front of the hall, Tank resting beside him on a padded mat. All right, he said. So today we're talking about how some species choose to live alongside creatures that can't reason, speak, or pay rent but still manage to save lives. A tentacled student raised a limb. Why not teach them to speak? Because, Bram said, they already know everything important. Tank let out a deep, satisfied sigh. This time, no one ran. Tank coughed. Not the kind that shakes walls or startles small mammals, but a dry, hacking stutter that Bram didn't like one bit. Still with me? Bram crouched, brushing a hand over the dog's scruff. No weird twitches? No second round of alien microbes? Tank blinked at him, coughed again, then thumped his tail once in a lazy acknowledgement. Bram glanced at the hydration monitor on the collar. Levels were low. All right, water first, diagnostics later. He clipped the leash onto Tank's new Varnexian woven collar and stepped into the corridor. The hall was quiet, curving gently with the station ring's arc. Only a few students milled about. One of them, a short, iridescent-skinned Tiliac with a cart of nutrient cubes, paused and gave Tank a cautious nod. Tank wiped once. At the lounge, Bram filled a ceramic bowl from the filtered dispenser and set it down. Tank lapped slowly, then nudged the bowl toward Bram as if critiquing the mineral content. Yeah, I know. Still not as good as puddle water. Someone cleared their throat nearby. Bram turned to see a tall, copper-scaled alien with a matte blue robe and a data rod tucked under one arm. You are the human with the beast, the newcomer said, voice gravelly but not hostile. Depends on which beast you mean. The one that growls happily, or the one that eats leftover socks. The alien didn't laugh. I am Nalik. I study adaptive symbiosis. There's a dispute in our department. It concerns your animal. Bram stood up. Dispute. Nalik gestured toward the academic wing. Some believe he is artificially modified. That no organic creature could possess such emotional synchronization with a nonverbal species. They presented a petition. Bram frowned. You're saying they think Tank's a robot? Or genetically engineered beyond acceptable baseline? One professor claimed he was a bioempathic construct designed to manipulate foreign students into trusting humans. Bram stared. You're kidding. I am not. Tank coughed again. Nalik looked down. That sound. It is not threatening, yet discomforting. He's recovering from a fever. We're monitoring him. He's not dangerous. I did not say he was dangerous. I said he unsettles our assumptions. Bram crossed his arms. So what do you want from me? A scan? A blood sample? Swab his ears. We would like to observe him. In motion. In social conditions. He's not a lab project. Then demonstrate he is not. Bram hesitated. Tank sat down next to him, yawning wide enough to show molars. The copper-scaled alien made a low throat sound, something like surprise. Nalik adjusted his data rod. We have scheduled a demonstration arena in the biodome. Mid-cycle. You are invited. Bram gave a dry laugh. Tank and I aren't a circus act. Then prove it. Or allow rumors to define your species. They left without waiting for a reply. Later that day, Bram sat cross-legged on the biodome grass. Tank sprawled beside him. The arena was enclosed by a transparent dome that simulated natural light and had enough space for movement drills, mock habitat interactions, and whatever else the xenobiology department could dream up. Today, it held an audience. At least 40 students and staff lined the outer edge. Some had data slates, others scribbled notes by hand. A few looked openly skeptical. Nalek stood near the central control node, flanked by 2 instructors whispering in low tones. Bram adjusted the leash and looked down at Tank. So, apparently you're either a science miracle or a manipulative weapon. Ready to prove you're just a drooly fuzzball? Tank sneezed. A vibration hummed through the ground, a signal that the session had begun. Nalek's voice echoed through the speaker notes. Human subject Bram Carter will now perform behavioral demonstrations with his companion. Any faculty may request specific actions. The objective is to determine authenticity of claimed symbiotic responses. Bram raised a hand. You know this is ridiculous, right? It is protocol. Fine. He turned to Tank, gave a hand signal. Tank sat. Another signal. Tank dropped to the ground. He rolled, stayed down, then sprang up on command. A few murmurs from the crowd. Someone called out, "Have him identify a person." Bram pointed to the far end of the arena, where a tall, red-shelled Bulgari stood. "Go say hi." Tank trotted over, tail high, and plopped down at the Bulgari's feet. He sniffed the alien's hand, then nudged it once before returning. "Next?" Bram asked. "Emotion detection," someone shouted. Bram paused, then took a breath and deliberately dropped his posture. Shoulders slumped, head down. He let his breathing hitch slightly. A feigned anxiety response, not perfect, but close enough to mimic the real thing. Tank immediately pressed against his leg, pawing at his knee, then nosed under Bram's arm until Bram straightened again. Silence. Then a new voice, sharp and clipped. "Introduce a stressor. See if it maintains composure." Bram turned. The speaker was a narrow-faced professor with 3 ocular nodes and a disapproving frown. "Define stressor," Bram said. "Loud noise. Sudden movement. Unexpected behavior. If it is truly bonded and not pre-programmed, it will protect rather than panic." Bram sighed. "You wanted to scare the dog to prove he's not a robot. It is a valid test." Bram knelt and whispered, "All right, buddy. This is gonna be weird." He stood, walked 10 paces away, then without warning shouted, "Help." Tank leapt up, sprinted toward him, and skidded to a halt at his feet. He circled Bram twice, then positioned himself between Bram and the crowd, ears up, body tense. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He waited. Bram dropped to one knee. "It's all right. Just a test. You did great." Tank relaxed, tongue lolling slightly. The professor stepped forward. That was not a fear response. That was assessment. "He weighs over 100 pounds and just got over a fever," Bram said. "Of course he's not going to flail around screaming. He's evaluating." Which is not typical of Earth candidates. Bram stood. Maybe not typical, but still natural. You think every lab rat behaves the same? Every Bulgari reacts to stress with the same posture? Tank's not a machine. He's just unusually decent at reading the room. Nalek approached slowly, data rod dark. "There is no deception in this interaction," he said, "nor engineered conditioning. The results are consistent with genuine interspecies bonding." The skeptical professor frowned. "We will require independent validation." "Go ahead," Bram said. "Just don't expect him to jump through flaming hoops." Hours later, Bram sat outside the biodome with Tank dozing beside him. A soft breeze from the ventilation towers stirred the grass. Sutro appeared, holding a thermal flask. He sat down without asking. "You made many of them uncomfortable. They wanted to show." "I gave them honesty." "You are aware," Sutro said, "that our species rarely forms deep bonds with quadrupeds. I'm aware your species also voted to ban chewing gum after one incident involving a ventilation duct. We are cautious. You're terrified." Sutro sipped from the flask. "Perhaps. But today, you subverted that terror." Bram looked down at Tank, who snored softly in the grass. "I didn't do anything special. I just let him be himself." That, Sutro said, was the special part. 2 days later, Bram received a campus-wide notification. The Xenobehavioral Board had issued a retraction of all deception-based claims against Tank. An attached note clarified that Earth canids exhibited a non-linear complexity of social response, and that further assumptions should be withheld pending broader cultural context. Tank received a chewable medallion shaped like a star with the letters ICA etched in it. He buried it in Bram's laundry. At the next cultural symposium, Bram was asked to speak again. He declined. Instead, he let Tank sit on stage while students approached one at a time, hands out, eyes curious. Tank didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just wagged.